I think I have just invented my own homemade BS or claptrap detector. Every time a politician uses the phrase, the British people, be very careful. If they use it again and again, run in the opposite direction, holding your nose. In today's debate about new laws against illegal immigration, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, was very keen to tell us what the British people were like and what the British people wanted, and that they, the British people, were being taken for a ride, while her opposite number, Yvette Cooper, was equally keen to tell us that Britain, and therefore I guess the British people, were better than, well, Suella Braverman. Horse manure all round, says the detector. The proposed new law would oblige the government to arrest every asylum seeker who arrived in the UK illegally and keep them for 28 days without bail or judicial review until they could be removed, either to a safer third country such as Rwanda or where they came from. No illegal migrant would have the right to stay here. As for legal migrants or refugees, there will be a cap on the number Britain takes each year, decided by Parliament.
There are 100 million people around the world who could qualify for protection under our current laws. Let's be clear, they are coming here.
Wow, 100 million coming here. It has been pointed out since then that excluding Ukrainians, fewer than 1 million people applied for asylum right across Europe last year. So that is, Home Secretary, quite a big number. Meanwhile, there are huge practical difficulties. This is going to require enormous and completely secure new detention camps. And then there's the question of how you actually return fleeing people to. For instance, Taliban-ruled Afghanistan, war-ravaged Syria, or Yemen or Somalia, which are both in the throes of civil wars. Even if the flights to Rwanda take off, it's taking only a modest number. So that question remains. What do you actually do with returnees to despotic or violent places? Do you chuck them out of helicopters, force them over the border with pitchforks? I don't know. I've spent quite a bit of the day talking to Conservatives, including quite senior ones, and the word that recurs again and again when they're discussing this bill is performative. That's rather a bland word, but it's really very rude. It means they think Tory ministers are doing this only for effect, dancing around in front of the voters, and that it won't work. It's not serious. And that is pretty much what Yvette Cooper, in her best, very serious voice, was saying too.
Enough is enough. We can't afford any more of this slogans and not solutions, just government by gimmick, ramping up the rhetoric on refugees but picking fights simply to have someone else to blame when things go wrong. This bill isn't a solution. It is a con that risks making the chaos worse. Britain deserves better than this chaos. Britain is better than this.
After that, Braverman went full throttle against the Labour Party and lefty hypocrisy in general, which might be at least part of the point of all of this in the first place.
She says get serious. Well, let's look at the facts, Mr. Speaker. The British people want to stop the boats. It's one of the 5 promises that the Prime Minister made to the British people. But stop the boats didn't even feature in the Leader of the Opposition's 5 big missions. It's because he probably doesn't care, or is it because he doesn't care, or because he doesn't know what to do? We all know why, and I think the British people know why.
Now, it's hard to be sure how the politics of this are going to play out. On the one hand, the current situation, 45,000 illegal migrants over the Channel last year, is clearly unsustainable. And Braverman is right. In a world ravaged by climate change and war and dictatorship, there are almost endless places from which new migrants could come in the years ahead. Is Labour's policy of doing more to tackle the gangs really a big enough response? If voters conclude no, then Labour will pay a very high price. On the other hand, this is not risk-free for the Tories either. They've tried a law like this before, and it failed. Now they're promising big again. If this doesn't work, if they build big new camps in Kent and then they can't get people back to where they came from, voters won't forgive them. For what it's worth, I think a much more significant move would be a new deal with the French to close their coast to people smugglers. Now, Rishi Sunak is taking key members of his cabinet to France to meet President Macron and his team on Friday. And that is where I would expect the real deal. What would Macron want in return, I wonder, because it would certainly be something. Perhaps a new agreement on fishing rights because President Macron's having lots of problems with coastal communities in Normandy and Brittany. Anyway, what happens in France on Friday will be much more important, I think, than the overexcited scenes in Westminster today.